So I was shocked and dismayed, as no doubt many of you were, to see the Cathedral of Notre Dame de Paris, or as we call it in America, Notre Dame, burn up a few days ago. And, at this point, it seems like it's almost certainly arson. I say it seems like because there have been several statements to that effect by various official and important personages who presumably would be in a position to know. There have also been a rash of deadly and destructive church attacks in France and throughout Europe over the last several years, including the Saint Sulpice Church just, a week or two ago. Priests and nuns have been beheaded in dramatic attacks. There was a plot against Notre Dame itself, foiled just a few years ago. So this is part of a pattern, an ongoing pattern of attacks that is widespread and apparently shows no sign of abating. There's also webcam footage of a man on the roof, striking sparks or creating flashes of light before the fire really got going. And this fellow is apparently not wearing a hard hat or vest, so therefore not a construction worker. But given the sensitivity of this subject and these events and the narratives surrounding them, it's, there's almost no hope that the French government is ever going to give us a straight story about this. So, I don't know, I guess officially it's still an accident having to do with the renovations, and not sure if that's going to change. Although it certainly seems, all indications are that things are otherwise than that. So, one kind of heartwarming fact, since this disaster occurred, whatever its nature, almost 900 million euros have been raised or pledged for the reconstruction of this, historic and priceless, aesthetic and spiritual and historical monument that this cathedral was. This irreplaceable artistic and architectural and aesthetic and spiritual treasure that it was. And 900 million euros probably goes a long way towards restoring it. There might even be some left over in the bank afterwards. But these kind of buildings are tremendously expensive. Some estimates are that for hundreds of years, ecclesiastical construction consumed directly or indirectly 20% of the regional economy of the Paris Basin. And the figures were probably similarly high in other centers of church construction. And so communities, many of them, fairly small by modern standards, 5,000, 10,000 people, were building these massive ornate cathedrals, sometimes taking dozens or even hundreds of years to do this, and employing hundreds of workers in these relatively small communities of a few thousand people sometimes. And this happened all over Europe for hundreds of years, and this huge investment of resources may have extended the Dark Ages for hundreds of years, actually. By tying up capital in this ornate but not, what we would conventionally call productive format. Regardless of what you think about that, it's done, and these buildings are, treasured artifacts of that era now. And, I would like to see them preserved and protected rather than destroyed. But, this pattern of desecration of churches is, very reminiscent of the behavior of the early Christian churches towards pagan sites and other sites. St. Augustine in Carthage around 400 AD said, "For that all superstitions of pagans and heathens should be annihilated is what God wants. God commands, God proclaims." A few years later, Pope Gregory I said, "If any images stand even now in the temples and shrines, they shall be torn from their foundations. Altars shall be destroyed in all places." As late as the 700s, St. Boniface was still at it in Hesse, cutting down the sacred oak of Donar, of Thor. So, this pattern of desecration is something that the Christians used in their early history to achieve dominance over Europe. And, monuments claim territory, so, one way you can take it from people is by destroying their monuments. It's the same thing going on with the statues, all over America that are coming down. The statues of, evil dead white males. They're taking our territory away from us by destroying our monuments. Just like, in this case, rival monotheisms, well, at least in the cases of the authenticated attacks, desecratory attacks against Christian sites, these are being done by rival monotheists. And they're using the same kind of intolerant acts to, disrupt Christian practice and symbolism, and to institute their own over a geographic area. So they're denying that area to Christians. They're not allowing them to operate freely or without fear, and they're claiming that right and that prerogative and that ability for themselves. And, doing other things like the call to prayer, going out over the land, that's something that if you put up with an invasive religion, doing that, then you're effectively subject to them already. And that's the message they're trying to send with that. Notre Dame itself stands on the former site of a Roman temple to Jupiter. So there's a long precedent for intolerant monotheisms using this kind of desecration, or, claiming and repurposing holy sites for their own. And so it's kind of interesting to see that playbook being run, against Christianity by an even more vigorous and intolerant monotheism. There have been several claims that this is an example of divine retribution. A Canadian Muslim politician has said that this fire was divine retribution for France's burqa and niqab bans. An Israeli rabbi has said this is divine retribution for the 13th century burning of a Talmud in Paris, I believe. The most tenable divine retribution story here is, one based on direct causation, measurable causal relationships, cause and effect, causality. And that's the clown pope, divine retribution for the fake clown pope who sits on the throne in Rome of the Vatican. And this asshole, idiot, who is more loyal and more supportive to the invasive rival monotheisms that are coming in and attacking his church and the offices and officials of his own church and the leaders of his own flock and their holy sites and religious buildings. He's more loyal to the attackers who are desecrating the sites that are holy to his church than he is to his own church and to his own flock and to his own infrastructure. This idiotic clown pope, this traitor, backstabbing, foot-licking clown pope, this fake pope who sits on the empty throne in Rome. You can make a direct causal argument that his views and policies are directly responsible for this fire, if some of the facts are as people presume. Now, there's two major suspect groups, if we are, speculating about the possibility of arson. There could be other minor suspect groups, but the two main suspect groups are, I'm not going to name them, but they're rival monotheisms that share a holy land with Christianity. Members of both of these groups have, repeatedly expressed glee, celebratory glee on social media and other mediums, and been incredibly happy about these attacks, which are, just pointless and destructive. Not totally pointless in the sense that they do have a rationale and possibly an effect, but it's not the kind of destruction that any sane Western person would celebrate, whether it's against Christian sites or pagan sites or Buddhist sites or whatever. And we have denounced this kind of destruction. when it has occurred in other areas against other faiths as well. But both of these groups that are the prime suspects in this case have done tremendous damage to Western civilization in the past. Both of these groups have failed to protect Western civilization from their own bad actors repeatedly in the past. Both of these groups have instead tended to protect and support their own bad actors in the past in various ways. Whether it's by, shaming us and, trying to prevent us from even inquiring about who among them are bad actors and who isn't. Basically disallowing us from trying to distinguish between bad actors in their midst and non-bad actors, supposedly. Or even considering the possibility that they could have bad actors in their midst when, demonstrably they do. And so, I would say both of these primary, suspect ethno-religious groups that people are talking about, we may never know who actually set this blaze, but I would say both of these groups who are primary suspects in this case, even if they do get blamed falsely, because either one of them could, or maybe even both of them, I don't know. But even if they get blamed falsely, basically they're getting off easy. That's my point of view on that. So I'm not going to accuse them of that, but I'm definitely not going to stick up for them. And this really just showcases the vulnerability of Western civilization and high trust societies to bad actors, and the amount of destruction that a single bad actor or a small group of bad actors can do to high trust societies. Because this looks like maybe a single actor, or at most a small number, and we're talking about somewhere on the order of $1 billion in damages. Tremendously costly. The members of any group have to do a lot of good, to offset the bad done by one bad actor in their midst. If one bad actor can do $1 billion in damages. Now, not every bad actor can, but if you have even a few in your group, in your midst, that you're, sheltering and protecting and justifying and encouraging and, trying to deflect, any inquiries about responsibility or blame for that person or for your group, then, I'm sorry, but not a lot of groups can claim to do enough good to offset that kind of harm. So, this is just a real example of the vulnerability of high-trust Western societies, of individualist Western societies that refuse to look at, groups and group strategies and group competition and group conflict and those kind of factors. Extreme vulnerability of individualism, of enlightenment, egalitarianism, of multiculturalism, of classical liberalism, meritocracy, all these kind of ideologies that advocate we take people as individuals and we have an obligation to welcome diverse foreigners and whatever the case may be. They're not all the same ideology, but they all contribute to these vulnerabilities. And it doesn't take very many bad actors when they can do $1 billion in damage each to really offset the any good that the other members of those groups could do to our society. So I'm definitely not going to stick up for them or shield them from any blame or accountability, although I'm not in a position to throw any accusations at anybody right now. And that's all I have to say about that for now. But if you like the channel, if you like the video, subscribe, like, share. There's some links down below to support the channel and purchase merchandise or whatever. I'll talk to you soon.